Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into my craft room on what is proving to be an extremely hot day. But nonetheless, I am going to be crafting because where else would I rather be? So I hope that you are able to join me live, and if you're not able to join me live, welcome to the replay, which always feels like a slightly weird thing to be saying because obviously I'm now and you're watching in the future. But anyway, you are welcome wherever you're watching from. I am just going to check on my iPad that I am live where I think I am, and if you are there, it really helps me for you to say hello and tell me if everything is looking and sounding okay. So let me have a look. Let's turn the volume down on that because nobody needs to hear me twice over. Okay, so it looks like somebody is there, although I can't see who it is, but it would be great if you could say hello and let me know how things are looking and sounding. As I mentioned, it is extremely hot here. I've just been outside. We've got a garden thermometer and it's in the shade and it's reading 28 degrees, just over 28 degrees in fact. So it's very hot. I think it's at least as hot as that in the house. I have got windows open and I've also got a fan on. So if you see my hair blowing around, that's the reason why. And I hope that the sound isn't going to be distracting. If it is, let me know. But I thought I need to at least start off not being too hot to think. So let me know if it's a problem, but I'm hoping that it will be all right. I'm not really complaining about the weather. We so seldom get beautiful summer weather in the UK, and I looked at my weather app today and it's showing bright sunshine for the whole of the next week, so I have my fingers crossed that we're going to get some lovely weather. The humidity isn't too bad today. I don't like it when it gets very humid, but hot dry weather is my bag, so I do really like that. So I can see Mary's here. Welcome, Mary. It was lovely to see you a little bit earlier, and welcome to my session this afternoon. So I'm going to be talking about Stampin Spritzers this afternoon. I know some of you will have over the years done techniques classes with me where we use them quite a lot, so you'll be already familiar with them, but maybe a reminder's not a bad thing. I really love them as a little piece of kit. They're super reasonably priced, and I think that often people don't use them because they don't really know what to do with them. So I've got, depending on time, at least 6 techniques to run through with you using them this afternoon. I've got some completed projects to show you, so I'm not just showing you the techniques, but I'm actually showing you that it is quite useful. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So Mary's saying hello to me and to everyone, so hello to you too, Mary. I made a few notes on some things that I need to remember to tell you. The new mini catalogue, of course, is live now. There are lots of things in there for summer crafting as well as into autumn and the festive season. Celebration is running. Lots of you have already placed orders and included free things in that. So for Celebration, every time you spend £45, then you can choose a free £45 spend item from the Celebration catalogue. And if your order's bigger and you spend £90, you can choose 2 of those items, or indeed one of the £90 spend items. And there are packs of paper, there are stamps, there are dies, there's a lovely selection of things to choose from. And Sandy's here. Sandy's saying hello to everyone. You are very welcome, Sandy. Thank you for joining me. Is the weather hot with you in Lincolnshire? I think you often get the heat up there, don't you? What's it like today? It's certainly really warm here. And Celebration is the best time of all to join as a Stampin' Up demonstrator. I would love to have you join with me, and there is a fantastic planner package that you get completely free when you join during Celebration, so that's during July and August. You get a beautiful planner, a ring bound planner for 18 months, so starting now and going right through to the end of next year. It comes with notebooks, it comes with a stamp set, lots and lots of bits and pieces to help you with your planning and diary keeping. So if you'd like to know more about that, it's in the Celebration brochure, or you can just get in touch with me and I can answer any questions you have. Joining Stampin' Up is probably right for you if you've got a really big wish list, if you'd like to make some new crafting friends, if you like to craft with friends, because there are all kinds of events that you can attend. If you'd like to get a discount on your shopping, I would think that's pretty much everybody. And there are all kinds of other good reasons. You can even earn a little bit of extra money as well. So if you think that might be interesting, just get in touch and I'll tell you more. I'm going to, no, I'm not going to turn the camera down because I forgot. I've got something else to tell you. Stampin' Up announced some very exciting news, which is that by the end of this year, they will also be operating in Ireland and Belgium. So if you have friends in Ireland or Belgium who like crafting, then make sure they know to watch out for Stampin' Up coming to them very soon. And if they would like to receive catalogues once it's up and running in their area, then you can let me know, give me their contact details, or they can get in touch with me and I can make sure that I do that for them once everything is up and running later in the year. Okay, I think that is pretty much everything I need to tell you at the moment. So I'm going to turn the camera down. It's all going to go pink in a minute. Marjorie is here and she can say hello to everyone. Hello, Marjorie. It is lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let me just reverse the camera, turn everything down. I'm not going to promise that I will get everything in the right place quickly like I did last week, because I just seemed to be fiddling around forever last week. So I will just tell you that I will do it as fast as I can this time around. Okay, I need to sort out the cables, don't I? That's something I always forget until I see them. Well, actually, that's not looking too bad. Not too bad at all. Let's just bring things in a little bit more, see if I can improve it slightly. I need to tilt it one way or the other, and I never know which way to tilt it. Let's try that way. Okay, and let me just tear off a little bit of washi tape and hold up this microphone cable out of the way. We're very high tech here. I've popped my contact details there for you. I've also popped this month's host code. So if you order from me online using the current host code, then next month I post out a little thing to you as a thank you. And when you check out of my online shop, and that's the website there, then there is a little box that you can input the host code, and if you input this code, then I will send you a little thank you. Alright, I'm just going to take this microphone off because I need to put on an apron, because there's going to be a little bit of ink flying around in a moment, so I'm just going to cover myself up. Bear with me. Okay, I should have had it on at the beginning, but to be honest, putting on an extra layer of clothing was really more than I wanted to do until I absolutely had to. Alright, so let's move those out of the way. Now, one more thing to tell you about before we actually get spritzing is that there is a new sweet sampler. Ooh, just knocked a block on the floor, never mind. So the new sweet sampler is from the Texture Chic Sweet, which is a little bit of a mouthful. I really love this. I love the colours, and I love the fact that the papers are patterned on one side and have gold foil, which is gorgeous, and then on the other side you've got papers which will work for all the seasons of the year. So I think it's a really, really versatile suite. So I've given you a sheet of card in 6 colours to coordinate. There's Soft Suede, Mango Melody, Evening Evergreen, Soft Succulent, Petal Pink and Pool Party. Then you get a 1/4 of a pack of gold foil sheet, which is a piece like that, 6 by 12 inches. A 1/4 of a pack of distressed gold paper, which is beautiful. This is stunning when you die cut it. So that again is a piece 6 inches by 12 inches. And then you get a 1/4 of a pack of the patterned paper, which I will show you. So this one is pink and gold, and then on the back it has flowers, which is really pretty. That's lovely, I think, for spring and summer. And you can see that you've got this beautiful kind of artistic look to the papers. They are really gorgeous. This one is pink and orange. That's one of my favourite colour combinations with gold foil. And then on the back we have more flowers. Then we've got orange, pink and turquoise, the Pool Party, again with gold. On the back of that we have autumn leaves. I'm hoping the leaves are going to show up. I'm just going to wait and watch my iPad catch up. And yes, I think you can see them there. They look a little bit like they've been stenciled on. Then we've got a dark green one, Evening Evergreen with gold. On the back of that there are snowflakes, so you can even do Christmas cards with this paper. Pink and polka dots. And we've got seashells on the back of that, so pretty. And then finally some mid bluey greens with gold on one side, and then a sort of a plank, wooden plank pattern on the back with lots of spattering. So that's a quarter of a pack of the papers. You get a quarter of a pack of the cards and envelopes. So these cards have kind of a spatter on wood grain texture to them. So you've already got your first layer done for you. And the envelopes are beautiful with this gold foiling on them. And finally, a half a pack of rustic metallic dots, which go really nicely. They work with the gold, but they also work with the darker tones. So that then is the Texture Chic sampler pack. I will put those together for everybody who orders one, and you have until the 22nd of this month, the 22nd of July, to order them. And as always, I've priced it at the pro rata catalogue price, and then I just round it up to the nearest pound. So that comes out at £14 if you can collect it from me, and £16.50 if you would like me to post it out to you. It comes out in a board backed envelope, second class post. So if you would like to order one of those, just pop me an email and I will make it happen for you. Alright, I'm just looking for somewhere safe to pop that. So there we are. Okay, so now I'm going to get going and show you what we're doing today. So Stampin Spritzers then, what am I talking about? Well, they're these. They are a little bottle that is just a little bit under 6 inches long. They have a cap and they have a spray nozzle on there, and you can fill them up with all kinds of things just by unscrewing the lid. They come in a 2-pack, and a pack of 2 of these costs you £3.25. I think that is super good value. Other things I'm going to be using today, and I wrote them down so to try and make it easy for you. So that's the spritzers there. Everything I'm using today pretty much is from the annual catalogue. In fact, I think everything is. So there's the Stampin Spritzers, page 129. I'm also going to be using a silicone craft sheet. That's on page 129. You've seen me use those lots of times before. They're non-stick, they keep your work surface clear, and they're useful for all kinds of techniques. And then I'm going to be using 2 different kinds of card. One is the shimmery white card. This is beautiful. It has a shimmer to it, unsurprisingly. But what's great about it, apart from the shimmer, and I don't know if the shimmer will show up, I'll try and kind of tilt it in the light, but sometimes those things are hard to show you on camera. The other thing about it is, because of, I don't think it's really showing that shimmer, but it's lovely. It's quite a subtle shimmer. The coating on this means that it will take wet media really well. So wet ink, water isn't going to be a problem with this. If you try to use our standard basic white or very vanilla card, or even the coloured cards, they're not designed to take very wet media. And you'll find that the surface of the card will degrade, it will pill, it'll break down. Sometimes the fibres kind of delaminate simply because it's not designed to be used for that. So you either want to use the shimmery white card, that comes in an A4 size, or you want to use the watercolour paper. So this is a fluid 100 watercolour paper. It's not manufactured by us, but it is packaged specially for us. And this comes in 5x7 inch sheets. It's 100% cotton paper. It's very sturdy. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to see, it has a slight texture to it, but not too much of a texture, which means that you can stamp on it with no trouble at all. And this will take as much water as you can throw at it, because it's absolutely what it's designed to do. So I'll be using both of those papers today, along with the spritzers. So the watercolour paper and the shimmery white are all on page 140. And I'm also going to be using some masks, or as I tend to call them, stencils, and you'll find those on page 128. So that's everything that I'm going to be using today. Let's bring some bits and pieces in. So I have at least 6 techniques I'm going to show you. Well, strictly speaking 7, I suppose, because I'm going to start off with a really straightforward basic one, which is just spraying ink. So let me bring in a piece of shimmery white card. I'm also going to be using kitchen paper. Now you could use newspaper, you could use scrap paper, anything you like, because I'm going to be doing a lot of techniques one after another, and I'm going to be getting my work surface quite wet. I'm just going to use this because it's very easy to take a piece off and add another one, and it's really quite absorbent, but you don't necessarily need to use that kind of paper if you're working at home. So I've got one of the spritzer bottles here. I don't know if you can see, but I've got just a very small amount of water in the bottom because I don't need a lot for this. I'm just going to make a sample to show you. So the water is coming up to about here. It's about 3/4 of an inch deep in there, so not very much at all. And I'm going to bring in a bottle of re-inker. This is my Bermuda Bay re-inker, one of my favourite colours, and believe it or not, I've got somebody at the door, so I'm going to leave you with that thought, and I'm just going to run. I'll be really quick. Right, I'm back. I'm so sorry about that. I did know that was coming, but I hoped it was going to be later in the afternoon. It's actually something for my daughter's birthday. So Lorelei, if you're watching, I know sometimes you do. I'm not going to say what it is, but I didn't want to run the risk that they were going to take it away again because I didn't go and answer the door. Okay, so I've got my spritzer with just a little bit of water in here, and I'm going to add a few drops of re-inker. Now, you're wondering, aren't you, how many drops am I going to add? And that really depends. It depends on the colour, because some re-inkers are more intense than others, and it depends on how dark you want your spray ink to be. So I've put in, I think that was 3 drops, and I think that's going to be dark enough just for me to show you. So now what I've made is I've made a very watered down ink, and it's in a bottle that I can spray. So I'm just going to show you how quick and easy that is to do. Okay, and it's, there we go. I had some water in the inside tube from where I'd washed it out last time. There we go. So that is the first thing that you can do with this. You can simply just colour some water with ink refills and spray it onto your card. So if I take away the paper so you can just see the card, I could have kept spraying and got much more even colour, but I like the more random effect of this. Now let that dry, which won't take long today, and then I'm going to put that away with my background pieces, and that will make a really nice background for a card. And of course you can make your spray ink any colour you like. Whatever you've got an ink refill for, you can use for this technique. Now you can lay a stencil down on that and spray through the stencil. That works really nicely as well. Obviously you will have patterns there left by your stencil. The one thing to say about any of the techniques I'm going to show you today is they are not precise techniques. To a certain extent you can plan the results you're going to get, but only so far, and quite a lot of it is going to be just the way it comes out. So if you're the kind of person that likes your crafting to be very precise and exact and very predictable, then you're going to have to let some of those expectations slide a little bit when you're playing with these kind of techniques, because there is an element of the unexpected in there. Now for me, that gives me endless opportunities. I think it's really exciting not quite knowing what the results are going to be. And the more you do it, the more you will be able to predict what your results are likely to be like, but they will still never be completely predictable. And if I sprayed another piece of card, it would look different to this one. So it's never going to be the same twice, and I really like that. In fact, that is almost dry straight away. That's how warm it is today. So I'm going to put that aside. Put my spritzer aside. I should probably say before I do that, to use this for a different colour, all you need to do is take it apart. So take off the lid, unscrew here, and you can also take off this nozzle protector piece here. And I just rinse them all out under running water, and then I refill it with clean tap water, and I spray into the sink, and that will remove all the coloured ink from the little tube inside. And once it's spraying out clear, I just rinse everything one more time and then let it air dry, and then you can use another colour in there. Just a note that because we're putting water in here, you need a water-soluble ink to go in there. Now all our classic ink refills are water-soluble and they will work brilliantly, but you don't want to be using something like StazOn in here because that's not a water-soluble ink, water-based ink. So don't try using StazOn. Alrighty, so the next thing, I can use that piece again I think. I'm going to bring in my silicone mat and a couple of ink pads and another spritzer. This is just filled with tap water, and I have some shimmery white card here, and first of all I'm just going to press my ink pads onto the mat. You probably can't see that awfully well, but you will in a minute be able to see where the colour went. Okay, so that was Granny Apple Green. This is Bermuda Bay. I'm trying not to overlap the colours too much because I don't want to contaminate my ink pads. But there we go. So I've just put some blobs, or they're rectangles really, of each colour on here. The next thing I'm going to do is spritz it with some water. So I'm going to put that down on some paper now. And I want to make sure that I can see all the colour beading up. And I'll try and show you that. So quite a good amount of water on here. So you want at least enough water, and if I can pick this up and show you I will, that you can see that colour starting to bead up on the mat. Like that. Now the more water you add, the paler your colours will be and the more they will blend. I actually like mine to blend quite a lot, so I am going to add some more. And as you add more water, you start to see the ink moving from one colour into the next. So I'm thinking that'll probably be enough. When you are doing this, I don't know if you can see, but I've got ink spatter all round here, so well off my paper towel. So just be aware that you are going to make a mess, and make sure you've got stuff down to protect your work surface if that matters. And if you're not wearing old clothes that don't matter, do wear an apron, because again, as the fine mist of water hits the ink, it will spatter, and that includes onto you. Right, so I've now got this very watery ink on my craft sheet, and I'm now just going to lay down some shimmery white card on there and just press it all over to make sure it makes really good contact on there. Hi Danny, I'm happy that you've joined us today. You're in London. I bet it's hot in London today, isn't it? I don't envy you that at all. I'm not a city person. I like being out in the countryside, but I do know that towns are warmer than out here in the country. So now I'm going to peel off that card, and you can see that I've got this beautiful mingling of blues and greens on there. Now the card will buckle because it's wet, but that will flatten out as it dries. And also, because it's curved, I've got some ink run off there, so I'm just going to touch that onto the edge of my paper. There we go. And that just needs to dry now. Now I have got a finished sample to show you in a second, but until then, of course, I have got all this ink on here. So let's pop another piece of paper in there and pick up some more of the ink. So this is watercolour paper, and I've got a pretty empty place there, but I've got lots of ink down the sides. So you can put it on there and press it down and move it around. You see, I'm getting all kinds of different effects. So Danny is saying it's very hot where they are. It's about 24 degrees, but too hot to craft in your conservatory. Gosh, I bet it is. Conservatories really hold the heat, don't they? Well, I was saying earlier, we've got a garden thermometer. It's 28 degrees here. According to that, that's in the shade. So it's a really hot day, really hot. I hope it cools down. Maybe you can do some evening crafting instead. There we go. So you can see I've just dabbed and dabbed and dabbed and dabbed to pick up as much of that ink as I can. The watercolour paper bends a lot less because it really is designed to take ever such a lot of wet media. And because that was my second pressing, if you like, on the ink, I've got much more mingling of the colours, but I have still got some distinct bluey Bermuda Bay patches as well as the green, and when that dries, that's going to be beautiful. Now you can use these as they are for backgrounds, or you can die cut them. They look beautiful die cut. You get really interesting colouring on your shapes. You can cut them into labels and banners and all kinds. So I'm going to set those aside to dry, and then I will show you one I prepared earlier. But first of all, I'm just going to dab off the rest of this ink. So you can see already I'm covered in blue and green. My grid paper is covered in ink. So this is not something to do if you hate mess. But actually I love it. If you've got children that like to craft, I think this technique in particular is a really fun one for them. Do it in the garden perhaps, when it doesn't matter if you get ink everywhere. And generally, because it's a water-based ink, it will wash out of clothes and things like that. Although, you know, don't wear your best clothes just in case. But I have certainly got ink washed out of my clothes before now. Okay, so here is a card that I made. I used the same colours for my background, and I used my Paradise Palms stamp set, just to stamp in black. So on this piece I've got lots of blue areas distinct from green areas, and then one of my secondary pieces where there was less ink on the craft sheet was here, so it's much paler, and I stamped my sentiment on that. And of course, depending on the colours you choose for your inked background, you may end up with completely different thoughts on which stamps you want to use. I just love the kind of the tropical ones, and here are some of my scraps. So you see I've got all kinds of bits and pieces here which I will keep, and they're going to be great for using on other projects. And if I'm doing something like this, generally I will make quite a few pieces of card at once, because if I'm going to make the mess, I might as well make plenty of pieces while I'm at it. Alrighty, so the next thing I'm going to do is going to involve a stamp. I'm going to use this stamp set. This is one of the free Celebration sets. I absolutely love this set. Stylish Sketches. I love the sketched style of it, and I think it works nicely for this technique. So I'm going to use the fox image, and rather than use perhaps a really foxy red, I decided that I would use early espresso, so that's a much richer, darker brown. And I've got some shimmery white card, but I could just as easily be using watercolour paper. That would also give me a lovely result. Now, if you saw my catalogue launch videos, was it the last week, week before last? What is today? Today's the 8th. Last week. I used this technique there on one of the leaf stamps, so I'm going to use it on a fox today. So I'm just inking up my fox stamp as usual. Then I'm going to spritz it again just with some plain tap water. Let's get some paper down so I don't end up with puddles of water all over my desk, and it's blowing because I've got my fan on. Check where the nozzle is, that's always a good thing to do. Oh, and I'm sorry to cough. Right, okay, back to the spritzing. So I want some water on all of that ink, but I don't want it flooding off. And again, every single time you do this, you'll get a different result. and then I'm going to stamp that fox down. So I spritzed him about 4 times, and there we go. Actually, that's a really good one. I'm very pleased with that. So that looks now as if I had just used a brush and some watercolour paint and very quickly and artistically sketched a fox, which I am not able to do. I'll tell you that now. That's why I love rubber stamping so much. I've also got a little bit of spatter here, which is great. And I've even got, I don't know if it'll show up, I hope it does, some really fine misty spatter from where I spritzed the stamp, and some of the ink flew off the stamp and onto my card, which was an accident, but that's nice, and I think that's really going to add to it. Now I'm going to use that particular one on a different project, but I have got a completed project which I will show you. I haven't completed a project for every single one of these techniques, but I have done 3 to show you. So this is the second one. So I'm just going to take the worst of the water and ink off that with my tissue. Just clean my stamp so I don't end up with brown ink over everything on my desk. So that one I'll set aside to dry. And then let me bring in a card that I have made. So I've used the same image, the same technique. And I've made a Z fold card. And if I lift it up, you can see that's that same fox image. It's come out differently this time because it will be different every single time you do it. So I'll show you the one I just did by the side for comparison. And I also deliberately added some spattering. There is a spatter stamp in that set here, so you could stamp with that. I just used my water painter and some early espresso ink, which I mixed with a little bit of water to make it really loose and runny, and just spattered a little bit across there. And then this panel of the card I've embossed with the, I can't think what it's called, but the embossing folder that's clouds and sky. Anyway, one of you might remember what that's called. So Danny's saying that they're a night owl crafter in general, 4 to 6 a.m. then bed. Wow. You and your granddaughter tried this last week, 6 years old, messed up using gilding wax, messed up with spritzing too much water, but told her it doesn't matter because the mess will always die cut a butterfly or dragonfly. Absolutely. Things like that are never wasted, are they? They will always create something else. And a lot of these things, I think it's all about the process, isn't it? It's not so much about the results. It's about having fun while you're doing it. You're learning about the tools. I think it's great to craft with grandchildren. Really nice thing to do. All right, so next one. So this time I'm going to use a mask. Stampin' Up call them masks, I call them stencils. So this is from the pack that's in the annual catalogue. I've got some more shimmery white here, but I could use watercolour paper. It's just personal preference. I like the shimmer in this. So the first thing I'm going to do is put ink onto my stencil, which sounds like the wrong thing to be doing, but I'm effectively going to use my stencil as if it was a stamp. So I'm just going to press my ink pad. This is Tahitian Tide, this colour, one of the new colours, all over the ink pad. Then I'm going to lay it on some paper just to catch the extra water and ink that I know is going to fly off. And then I'm going to spritz this so that ink is really, really runny. Oops, and I didn't look where my nozzle was to start with. There we go. So again, it's trial and error as to how much water you put on there. More water will get you a much runnier and less precise result. I'm going to try and put this down straight. There we go. And then I'm just going to press it down with another piece of paper on the top. This could be scrap paper, it doesn't have to be paper towel. And I'm holding the stencil in place with one hand, and then I'm pressing this all over the top with the other. And then the exciting bit is when you lift this off and see what you've got. Ooh, this is a very interesting one. So can you see that this, when I say you can't get a precise prediction as to what your result is going to be, that's exactly what I mean. You can see these smudgy areas where I had more water, the areas here I had less water, and you end up with what looks like quite a distressed effect, which I love. I really love that. So I'm going to clean off my stencil before I set it aside, and then I do have a finished project to show you for this one as well. It's my last finished project. Set that aside to dry for another time. And here's my finished card. So this is my stenciled panel. I used a different stencil for it. And I think for this technique, they make brilliant backgrounds where you're going to put something else over the top. So you can pick the areas you most like and make sure that you can see those. And cover up any bits that you didn't feel worked so well or you don't like as much. Oh, Sandy says she lost me for a minute, but now I'm back. So I don't know what happened, Sandy. It looked okay from my end, but anyway, I'm glad it's all right again now. So I used the hand-penned stamps and the, are they called the penned dies? I've got them here. I'm just having a look to see what the name is. Yeah, penned flowers dies for this. So I cut out my flowers. I also used the same dies to cut out the edging of that little layer there. And then I used I think it's called Stripes and Spatters. It's a 2-pack of embossing folders to emboss my white piece here, which I had cut using the Stitched Rectangles dies. So the colours are Tahitian Tide and Orchid Oasis, and then this one is Pear Pizzazz. I decided Parakeet Party, which is in the same set of in colours, was just too bright for this card. So there we are. So that's another thing that you can use with your stenciling, stamping with stencils, I call it. All right, let's get rid of that one. And I'll show you something else. Now this one, I've got a piece I prepared earlier. I'm going to finish off to show you, but I'll show you the first step of it to start with, but I am going to have to just drink some water if you'll bear with me, because I feel like I'm losing my voice. There we go. I had a glass of water half full up with ice when I came in here, and it's all melted. Alright, so for this I am going to use watercolour paper because I'm going to get it really, really wet. So I'll pop that on some paper. You want 2 ink pads. It doesn't matter what colour they are. Pick whatever colours are going to work with your stamps, but you want one that's a little bit darker than the other. And then you want a stamp of some kind, and an outline stamp preferably, rather than a solid stamp. So I'm using this flower from the Colour and Contour set, and I've picked the outline rather than the solid version of the stamp. And this is reverse watercolour, so you're going to end up with what looks like a watercoloured flower, but you're going to do the colouring in first, and then you're going to add the outline afterwards. So again, I've got my spritzer with water in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet my paper, and I'm going to wet it really well. So there's a lot of water on that. In fact, if I tip it up, yeah, it's just dripping off. So you want the whole surface wet, and in fact it's so hot it's starting to dry, so I'll just add a little bit more spray there just to make sure that stays really wet. Then I'm going to start with Mango Melody, and I'm going to just stamp this flower 3 times, and the ink is going to really run, so don't worry about that. I'm going to dab it off on my paper before I re-ink the stamp, just to take off some of that water, because I don't want to dilute the ink in my ink pad. And there's another one, and actually you can see how quickly things are drying because that's not bleeding nearly as much. And one more. and that one is bleeding even less. Now, if you want that ink to spread out more than it is, you can go back to it with your spritzer, which I will do and show you, and just spritz some more water on. And that will just encourage that ink to bleed and spread a bit more. And then you want to set that aside and let it dry completely. I'm going to clean my stamp because I'm changing colour, and then I'll bring in one I prepared earlier, which is dry, and show you the second step. So let me just move that one away. And here's one I prepared earlier, so you can almost not even tell that those are flowers on there. So that watercolour paper has dried, the ink has really spread, but what that gives me is the effect of a watercoloured flower. So once I restamp, you'll see what I mean. So this is pumpkin pie ink, it's the same stamp, and I'm just going to stamp over the top of those areas. Now, it doesn't matter whether you get this stamp in exactly the same place that you did first time round or not. There we go. So I've now got outlined flowers. I particularly like this technique for flowers, but you can use it for anything that you fancy. Now that I could use as a layer on my card and just embellish all this, or I could cut the flowers out. And use them applied to something else. Okay, so Danny is saying cut out a few seconds at a time. Oh, that's no problem. No, there's absolutely no right or wrong with techniques. Yeah, mats and layers match really well with the ink. Yes, I mean, that's something Stampin' Up does so well, isn't it? If your mats and your layers match with the ink, I think it just makes everything look fantastic. No matter what you do, it's going to look really professional and pulled together. So you're asking, do watercolour inks work okay with the embossing folders? Do you mean if you ink the inside of the embossing folder, Danny? Is that what you're asking? Because if you are, then yes, it works brilliantly. If you're asking me something different, then ask me again with different words, and I'll do my very best to explain. Okay, so that is reverse watercolour then. So you stamp it, you smudge it, and then you add the detail once it's dry. Okay, great, Danny, that's what you were asking. So yes, you can use these inks, ink the inside of your embossing folder. You can pop your card in there. Now you can spritz the folder with a little bit of water first, or you can just leave it with the ink straight from the ink pad. Run it through your embossing machine. If I'm going to spritz water on that ink, it's obviously going to become much runnier, and so I always add some paper towel under my embossing folder and over the top, and then my clear plate on top of that. So my sandwich has got paper towel top and bottom in between the clear plates, and then if any of that ink squidges out, it's just so much easier to clean up. And then to clean it up, I'll just wash that embossing folder, just hold it under running water in the sink, and it will wash all the ink off. So it's very, very easy clean up. So that's reverse watercolour. So that was technique number 4. So I'm going to bring in something a little bit different now. I'm going to remove that spritzer which has got water in it, and I'm going to bring one in that's got alcohol in it. Now, that one. I label mine. So this one has got rubbing alcohol in it, which might be something you're familiar with, or you might not be. I get mine on the internet. I believe in America you can just walk into a drugstore, what we would call a chemist, and buy this, but it's not so easy to find over the counter here, but it's very easy to find on the internet. All the big internet retailers, shall we say, sell them. There are different strengths of this. This one is 70% isopropyl alcohol. That means 30% of it is water. Now I like the 70%, that works well with lots of different techniques. The 90% one can be difficult, it might not work, it sometimes doesn't mix so well with ink and so on. So I would get the 70% one. It's very inexpensive. A container like this, which is 500 mils, costs, or last time I bought it, about £3 or £4, and it lasts ages. The bigger the quantity you buy, the cheaper it is per litre, obviously. but this is fine. Use it in a well ventilated room, because being a very high proportion of alcohol, it will evaporate into the air, and you don't want to be breathing in alcohol vapor really. But as long as you've got the windows open, you shouldn't find that you've got any problems with it at all. All right, so this time I have got some extra pieces of equipment. I have a cellophane bag, an old one. I've got another piece of shimmery white paper, and I like shimmery white better than watercolour paper for this technique, because I just think it takes the alcohol better, because it is slightly, it's got this kind of shiny coating on it. And I've got 3 Stampin' Blends markers. Now, these are not the round-barreled Stampin' Right markers, so let me show you the difference. So this is a Stampin' Right marker. This has a water-based ink in it. The Stampin' Blends markers, these have a rectangular barrel, not a round barrel, and they have an alcohol-based ink in them, and it says on here alcohol-based ink, and that's what you need. If you're using a water-based ink, then you need to dilute it with water to get it to run around and do exciting things. If you're using an alcohol-based ink, then you need alcohol for the same effect. So I hope that makes sense. You need to match things together for this technique. So alcohol ink, alcohol in your spritzer. If you could do it as well with water-based markers, in which case you'd need water-based ink in your spritzer. Sorry, you'd need water in your spritzer. All right. Now, you can use a plastic bag, you can use anything for this. This is just one of our cello bags, and it makes for a very easy cleanup, which is why I'm using it. But you want something with a shiny plastic surface, and I'm just going to scribble the brush ends of some markers on here. I'm just going to put some paper underneath, simply because I've got so much colour now on my grid paper. It might make it easier for you to see this. And I'm going to end up colouring a patch that is big enough for my piece of card. So the colours I've got here are Parakeet Party. I think that's the dark one. Let me just check. Yeah, dark Parakeet Party. Light Orchid Oasis. And then I'm going to bring in some light Sweet Sorbet. So I'm just putting some patches of this down. They're quite scribbly. I'm not trying to be very precise. And I'm trying not to touch the tip of my marker to one of the other colours. So I'm leaving just the tiniest of gaps between. I'm not doing that perfectly. Sometimes they do touch a bit. Simply from the point of view that I don't want to get, say, blue ink onto my pink marker. So you can be very precise how you do this, but I like random. So I'm not being precise. I'm going very random. There we are. So if I hold that flat, hopefully you can see that I've just literally scribbled patches. I've used the brush tip of the marker because that's quicker. So I now have a piece of plastic with alcohol-based ink all over it, which has probably, yeah, so that has dried. Not that you'd see it on my hands, which are absolutely filthy, covered in ink. But that has now dried. However, because it's alcohol-based ink, when we spritz it with rubbing alcohol, the ink is going to start to dilute. So I'm now going to spritz this all over with alcohol, and I think you can probably see that ink is starting to dilute. Now it will also be evaporating, so you want to work reasonably quickly, but you can add more alcohol if everything dries up. And I'm getting this really quite runny, and you can perhaps see the colour starting to move about. So I want a little bit of colour moving around, and it'll move around some more when I put my paper on. So this is my shimmery white card. I'm just going to pop that down, press it down well, and then I'll pick it up and show you. There we go. Now we have a fabulous background there, which is drying even as I watch it, because 70% of what I spritzed on is alcohol, and that is just evaporating. So that's a big advantage of using alcohol. I've got some kind of pretty bare patches there. So let's just press those back into some colour. That's better. I've got another one there. I don't mind the odd little bit of white. I think that makes it quite interesting. But there we go. That is my background. So I'm just going to polish off my cello bag. if you've got colour that has dried on here, then just spritz it with a little bit more alcohol, and then you can clean it off. And I can keep this for next time now. As this dries, it will go paler. So I've got a dried version here. So this one you can see has dried off. So the colours have gone much paler. So you probably want to start off with more intensely coloured markers than you want for your finished project. But you can see, even though one is drier than the other, the patterns are completely different, even though I used exactly the same colours. So this is a really fun technique. These pieces will be beautiful die cut into shapes, or you can use that as a really interesting background. If you want a background for perhaps an underwater scene, maybe you're going to put some fish on there, something like that, then you can pick some blues and greens and use this technique, and you end up with this beautiful merging of colour. I think it's a really fun technique, that one. And then the last one I'm going to show you today, which is something you may have come across in a different context, is the polished stone technique. Now you can do this with dropper bottles of alcohol ink instead of water-based inks. But I'm going to use ordinary card, not glossy card. Well, ordinary. This is shimmery white, but it's not a glossy coated card. And I'm going to use our ordinary re-inkers. So the first thing I've got is a piece of cotton wool here. I've got one of the cotton wool pads I use to take my makeup off, but you can use ordinary cotton wool. There we go. And I'm just wetting that. I could have done it under the tap, but I haven't got a tap by my desk, so I'm just tipping some of that water out. Okay, so I just want this, I don't want this so wet it's dripping, but I do want it quite wet. And I've just seen a comment pop up. Glad you understood about the embossing folders, Danny. Oh, and how nice. Well, I'm glad this is the tutorial that you wanted. Yes, it will save you some hours on YouTube because I've covered water and alcohol. Absolutely. I kind of feel like I should have called this part 1 because there's still lots more you can do. But 6 or 7 ideas is probably enough for one afternoon, isn't it? Okay, so I've got my wet cotton wool. I've got my ordinary re-inkers, so these are water-based. So when I put them onto wet cotton wool, I know that ink is going to run really nicely. And I've picked 3 colours I think work nicely together and will also look like perhaps granite or quartz, something like that. And I'm just going to drop some drops of these inks on my cotton wool very randomly. You already know that I like random. You can plan this a little bit more. I'm going to go with single drops of ink spread apart, so there are small patches of each colour. If you put 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 drops of each ink next to each other, so you'd make big blobs of the same colour, and then you would have a different effect with larger patches of one colour. So you can predict what it's going to be like to a certain extent, but not completely. Now, you don't have to completely cover up your cotton wool. You can have some white patches and that will probably work. I don't think I've told you which colours I've picked. So I have here grey granite, pear pizzazz and old olive. So I've picked greeny browny colours, and I think that's going to give me quite a good quartz effect. So I'm just going to set that cotton wool aside, bring in a bit more paper towel, and I'm now going to spritz my shimmery white card with water. Just get it nice and wet. That will help this ink to blend, and then I'm going to dab all over. And you can see, I hope, that ink spreading. And I'm going to go over the whole of this. There we go. So very, very quickly, I've now got my polished stone effect. And when I bring in a sample which has dried in just a moment, you will get a bit more of an idea of how it looks when it's completely finished. Gosh, Danny, you really have been going great guns with techniques, haven't you? You've got bubble wrap to try. Oh, that is so much fun. Ink your bubble wrap and stamp it. I love doing that. You can add water or not. and you're waiting to try cotton wool inking on Miri card for effect. Yes, that works really, really well. You'll probably find you need alcohol inks to stick to your Miri card, but you are going to have a lot of fun with that. So this is a dry version of the one I just gave you, and of course it's, you know, it's different. The colours distributed differently, there's a different balance of colours. But if you imagine those beautiful kitchen worktops, I don't have one, I've got Formica or whatever the modern equivalent of that is for my worktops, but the beautiful kind of matte polished quartz that you see on kitchen worktops, that's the kind of effect you get with this. So of course you can pick out all kinds of different colours. That would be lovely over stamped maybe with some trees or some leaves, again die cut or punched out to give you different shapes. But it makes for some really interesting colouring, and again, you know, the effects are pretty unpredictable. You know which colours you've picked, but you don't know exactly how they're going to distribute, don't know exactly how they are going to spread across the card, and that's one of the things that I really, really love. Now that is all I have to show you today. I've made quite a mess, I've got lots of ink across my desk, but that doesn't matter fortunately. I don't think I've got it on my clothes. I've got plenty on my hands, but then that shows I've just had a good afternoon, doesn't it? So let me just cover you over and bring the camera back up to show my face so that I can say goodbye to you. This hour seems to have gone by so quickly. I can't quite believe that it's finished, but it's 3 o'clock already, my word. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? Okay, try and sort that out. I think that's roughly right. So a huge thank you for joining me this afternoon. If you've enjoyed the video, it really helps me get seen by other crafty people if you can like and share it if you're on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll pop this up on YouTube later on my channel, and my channel is called Handmade at Home if you haven't found me there already. And if you like it on YouTube and even subscribe, that again really helps me get seen by people that might not know I'm there. I do this on a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock every week. So do join me again. Next week I'm going to be pulling out my perfectly penciled paper, which is quite hard to say. If you haven't found it already, it's in the annual catalogue. It's a black and white paper. It has floral images on one side and graphic detailing on the other side. It's one of my absolute favourites, so I'm going to be playing with that next week, giving you a few ideas. I hope to work with that. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Whatever you're doing, I hope you can get out in the sunshine. Maybe a nice cold drink, maybe an ice cream. I think it's going to be one of those weekends. I'm just going to see if there are any final comments before I say bye-bye. Danny, yes, great minds think alike. Yes, good for granite effect for die cutting or machine cut buildings. Now, buildings is a great idea, I think, for that. And I'm so pleased you found me on YouTube, and I'm delighted that you could join me this afternoon, Danny. It's always lovely to have somebody new joining in and commenting, so thank you for that. Thank you, Mary. I will see you next week, and I'm going to say bye-bye now because I'm in danger of just wittering. But whatever you're doing this weekend, have a great time, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.